Okay, so let's start with Modal Soul then. Um,
Yay! Wow.
yeah, tell me about it. Seriously. Like what brought you to be what do you love about this?
um, well, first of all, I've literally started listening to this album and just Nujabes in general back when this first came out. So this came out in 2006 and it's literally was only released in Japan. So I don't know how it got over to me, but
2005 actually.
oh, 2005, that is right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I knew it was around about that time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And a friend of mine, he was into like anime, like Cowboy Bebop and Samurai Champloo and stuff like that. And Nujabes did a lot of soundtrack stuff for Samurai Champloo. And so,
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, you just blew my mind there too.
oh, really?
It totally works with that kind of stuff.
Yeah, yeah. And there's soundtrack albums for the show that have songs that are not on his album. So, one of my friends made me like a blank CD of just stuff like that because I was getting into beats and production, and me and my friends would be trying to like do like really janky freestyles. So they're like so terrible, but we were just into that, and we were looking for beats, and one of our friends was like, "Yo, this is cool stuff." So I played it. I'm like, I really like this. Like, this is just like really jazzy, really chill, and also like very much like underground hip hop at the same time. Um, but like very much like the pinnacle of like all of those elements is they're not just thrown together. It's like there are jazz songs on this album, and there are rap songs on this album, and there's stuff that are kind of in between. So, um, I don't know, man. This album in particular, and just pretty much anything that Nujabes has been involved in, has been like a big part of my. Like, I used to listen to it when I was being homeschooled. Like, I would play it and just do my work and stuff, or it's just like it really calms me, and it also was like an inspiration for like the stuff that I've produced. It was like Nujabes, and then like later Kanye came in, and I really got into his style of stuff, which they're not that far apart, but Nujabes really focuses on jazz. Um, and he's not just a DJ producer, plays the keyboard, he knows how to arrange stuff too. And you can hear that in the album. It's not just a bunch of beats. Um, and I just really like it, man. It's just like one of my favorite forms of hip hop. Is this kind of style right here.
So he's
Um,
from Japan.
yeah, he's
Okay.
actually he's actually dead.
Oh,
So,
wow.
rest in peace. He died when he was like 27. But yeah, but
So he had a short
yeah,
career. This is his first album, I thought.
yeah, yeah. His first, he had done like some compilation stuff, but this was his first like legit album.
And he died in 2007, you say.
No, he died. I want to say in like 2009 or 2010.
Yeah, see, that's a super short window of time. You barely see anybody put out even two albums in that time
Yeah.
these
Well,
days.
I would say technically he probably started in like maybe early 2000s or whatever, and he would work with different like Japanese hip hop artists, and then he connected with some underground hip hop artists in the US. And he was just kind of building his brand, and he had like his own label and stuff. And but his stuff never really made it to a big level. So like a lot of his albums, like if you go on Amazon and try to look up these albums, like CDs of them, they're like collectibles. Like they'll be like $80 or to like get them shipped from like some record store in Japan. So um yeah, it's always, since it's been such an indie thing or like an underground thing, it's always felt like this is my music. Like nobody else knows about this but me, you know.
Right.
Even though I do see that it's now on Spotify, and that's what prompted me, like, hey, you guys should check this out.
Right.
So yeah, like I had to torrent to get this stuff back in the day. So like LimeWire, all that good stuff.
The good old days.
Yeah,
Good old days when you had to infect your computer to get good music.
right. Yeah, but
Seriously,
I'm
this
curious to
stuff
hear what you guys think.
this stuff sounds like the roots of hip hop to me, at least. And
Yeah.
I have zero background in listening to like hip hop or rap or
Mhm.
R&B or any of those beat heavy style
Right.
musics. I mean, we've already talked about how I have very little in EDM as well.
Hmm.
And so when I'm listening to this, I was just like, this sounds exactly like that style of beat heavy music that was catching on.
Hmm.
Like I don't know, the mid '90s is when I'm guessing hip hop
Yeah.
started to really get an idea. So really, when I was listening to this, I was like, this sounds like the beginning of hip hop. And then
Yeah.
throughout the years, hip hop has changed. I'm sure,
Yeah.
but it sounded very uh, it sounded very basic, I guess,
Uh-huh.
where it was like, to me when I first listened to it, I was just like, this sounds like this guy has good ideas and he doesn't know what to do with them yet, but he wants to at
Hmm.
least get it down on the record so that people can get excited about this style.
Hmm.
And it's not that that's bad or anything. It's just like
Hmm.
when he was putting things together, it was very clear that he had a lot of ideas. At least that's what it evoked to me. But now you're
For
telling me
sure.
all of this stuff that's like that it's based on like Japanese anime and how he's worked with all those types of things. It makes total sense
Hmm.
with that for it to be jumping around like
Hmm.
that, and like the inclusion of jazz and rap in anime. It's all over the place. It seems like every Japanese anime show that I've attempted to watch has put a lot of jazz in their production. They put a lot of
For sure.
beat heavy stuff into the production because they want it to be not just like what you expect, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I. Hmm. You know what? I was a little bit disappointed
Really?
because I really liked the first song,
Yes,
and
Feather, yeah. Yeah.
Feather's
and
amazing.
and
Yeah.
then it really kind of went in a bunch of different directions, and I really wanted a follow up
The
album
Feather, yeah.
for what was, for what the feeling in that first song. But you know what really tipped me off though? Tipped,
What?
not ticked, but
Tipped.
what tipped me off though was that it ended really sharply,
Hmm.
and I was kind of like at that moment like, this almost seems like a B-sides album. So like kind of like what Josh was saying, a
Hmm.
lot of maybe like unfinished ideas, a lot of really raw ideas, and I actually listened to it a few times and it grew on me, and
Uh-huh.
I like the album,
Yeah.
and it's got a really cool vibe,
Yeah,
but definitely almost feels like some of like it's like the hip hop version of like super indie lo-fi, kind of like Beck's early music, where you're kind of like, I don't totally know what's
Yeah.
going on here, but I love the ideas.
Yeah.
And it definitely did have that 90s vibe to it as well. Good job, Josh, for picking that out if you don't
it's
know
a
hip
total
hop.
guess.
Right.
It's a total
Especially for
guess.
somebody.
Yeah.
But no, for real, like especially on Feather, like just like the rapping style and all that is like very very reminiscent of like 90s hip hop.
It sounded
Yeah.
like RJD2 to me, if that scans for anybody else.
Sure,
Yeah.
sure,
Yeah.
some, yeah.
I can get that, yeah.
I think what Zach was saying there is pretty on the nose about how things felt like they were a little unfinished. And I think one of
Hmm.
the problems that I had with it was that a lot of the songs were really, really long. There's only like one song that clocks in under 3 minutes. Most of them hit
That's
almost
better.
5. And I
Yeah.
felt like every beat, every mix was really, really cool, but
Mhm.
most of them rely on having about a 10-second clip of music
Mm-hmm.
played in a loop, and then
Hmm.
you just kind of built off of that. And sometimes he didn't have a whole lot to build with it, and it
Right.
was just over and over again. And I was just like, okay, well that's cool, but now I've heard it.
Yeah.
Can you move along? Like Flowers, for instance.
I got you. Yeah,
Yeah, I
there's
was
not
just
a
like,
whole lot of variation in that one.
yeah, I was just like, okay, I get this and it's cool, but I'm ready for you to move on. And if this had been about 10 songs and the
Hmm.
songs had been about a minute less, except
Hmm.
for Feather should have been an extra minute long, but everything else should have been a little bit shorter. I would have said this is an amazing album. It's a quick, tight paced album, but
Hmm.
it totally makes sense that it's doing what it's doing, because this is a guy who's been working with soundtrack stuff where you want to have a lot of the same style music and the same tempo and the same pace, so that when they're making the TV show, they can just like pick from the track a bunch and not have it sound
Yeah.
exactly the same every time.
Yeah. Honestly, I would probably say my only flaw with this album would be that, yeah, it probably does run a little bit too long. Like the last three tracks, I probably would have cut those.
Okay.
And you could just have like a solid 11 tracks. I would have been fine with that. But I mean, I do enjoy the last three tracks. I just feel like they pale in comparison to some of the other ones um, that are here.
Yeah.
But and like over time, because it's so funny, when I first started listening to this album, I was more listening to beats. I wasn't listening for the tracks that had rap features or even just vocals in general. So like I would always skip those ones, just like for any of his projects, and then come back to the beats. And now that I listen to it, like I really appreciate like the lyricists that he picked to work with, like the jazz track, the second track with the guy who was just kind of like scatting or whatever, just kind of like
Hmm.
doing a little
Yeah.
freestyle. So like I can really appreciate it now, to where like 10 years ago, it's like I just want to hear the beats, man.
Yeah.
So I really like his style, and it's something that's been influential to me. And it's kind of like, this is like really good winter music. Like when I
Hmm.
get tired of hearing Christmas music, I will often put on Nujabes, just because it feels kind of cold and like, atmospheric, and just a lot of things, a lot of the
Hmm.
sounds and melodies that he chooses to work.
Well, and
I
just
can see
that
this
kind
being
of,
cold, for sure.
yeah, like that kind of jazzy, like you said, atmospheric, jazzy. Like it's definitely mood music,
Hmm.
and that's what grew on me.
Yeah.
Is it definitely like it creates a mood, and like even though it kind of sometimes is overkill with the length, sometimes I
Mhm.
kind of like it because it's like it's indulging a mood. Like it's kind of
Right.
like it's a little too long, but it's like you don't
Hmm.
want to let that mood go yet.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, for
That's
sure.
fair. That's definitely fair.
Yeah.
Well, I definitely enjoyed the album overall. Like, I wouldn't
Yeah.
say that it was a bad album. I think, like, I like the concept of it being overindulgent, but
Yeah.
but I wouldn't say it was a bad album at all. It was really interesting to
Yeah.
see. I really do like these albums that have like a, hey, I'm just throwing my ideas out there and I hope that something sticks. Like, I like it
Yeah.
when an artist is unafraid to just like at least show you how they think.
Right.
And so, yeah, I appreciated it for that a lot.
Yeah.
Well, cool. Let's move on. What do you guys think about Porter Robinson? Zach, this was your album. Is that correct?
Yeah.
oh, what? Never heard that.
Proto Robinson.
yeah, yeah.
Yes.
You never heard that one before?
You never heard that one before.
No, this one again, it was kind of a springboard off of Josh's Mattione suggestion last time, just because to me they both have kind of like similar vibes,
Mhm.
different kind of music in some ways, but same genre.
Mhm.
This album for me, I don't know why, but it creates such a mood and it creates such a like world for me, which is it's called Worlds. But it just like encapsulates me, and I just get in like this super pumped like space. And there are some features to it that have like almost video gamey kind of music qualities.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes even almost like enchanted, almost like anime enchanted kind of qualities. Like just very much like sucks me into uh just like, whether it's a video game or an anime or something, like a fantasy kind of world. And like it really, like, I don't know why, but I can really just paint pictures of like really vivid stories in my mind when I'm listening to this album. And sometimes it has to do with the lyrics, like the song "Thousand Years of War," or is it no, it's not "Thousand Years of War," it's like something 200 years of war. It's been a little bit
It's
since I
war.
listened
Years
to
of
it.
It's
War. That's
something
the
with a
third
long
track.
time of war.
Years
Yeah.
of War.
That's the third track. Yeah.
200 Years of War, I think. Yeah, anyway. And it's like "Fight Till We Are No More," "Curse on the Streets of Gold." Like I just feel like there's like minimal lyrics. They're kind of, not really about anything in particular, but like
Right.
it really paints a story in my head. And just with like the, the strong beats and the fun synth and sound effects, like it just really transports me. So I just, it's got a really great quality for me. It's a great, pump up album, great driving album, great just like sitting around and, chilling, kind of have it in the background kind of music. And I'd say like, I don't know, standout tracks. Polygon Dust, well, that one's pretty good. Hear the Bells is my favorite because it's got such a build, and I don't know, just really love that kind of music. Like it's almost like it takes the best of like kind of indie funness, and then puts it into an EDM style where you almost have like this anthem, this chant, this like, I don't know, this idea that they really kind of build on until it just explodes into rainbows. And like that's what this album is for me.
I will probably come back to this album again and try to give it like a full solid listen. Because when I listen to it, I would listen to it in like little snatches. Like I would listen to like 4 songs, and then I would do something else, or I listen to like 4 songs and I do something. So when I first kind of got into it, I wasn't really feeling it. And then as I kept coming back to it, it kind of clicked. I can't say that I really love it, but I can definitely see what he's doing, and why you picked it and why you like it. For me, the only really standout track that I was like, okay, I really liked it was the second to last track.
Okay.
Fellow Feeling, I think that's the name of it. And it reminded me of like Nero kind of,
Sure.
just like with the vocals and the way that it was put together. And like I'm getting a lot of Zed influences here, like on
Sure.
the entire album. Zed does a lot of those video game crazy sounds, but this is more experimental, the stuff that Zed does. So like I can kind of see like a lot of the, and I don't know if it's him influencing other artists or just kind of a collective. This is the sound that I'm going for.
Right.
But yeah, it's definitely quality, quality EDM for sure. I definitely want to go back to it some more times and where I could really formulate a solid opinion on it. But it's definitely quality.
I think anytime an EDM musician relies on, or at least makes a callback to something that Daft Punk did, I'm happy. But I'm also kind of like, can't you find your own? Can't you find your own way? Sometimes I get frustrated by that, but in this sense, every time that I heard something where I was like, oh, that's kind of Daft Punky, I was happy. So I'm kind of conflicted how I feel about that kind of thing, but those were definitely kind of the standout moments for me with this album. But overall, I would say that this was one of those albums that I can just put on in the background, and I'm not paying attention to it much, but it's going on and it's keeping me going with my work. It's keeping me concentrating, and that's not something that every type of music can do, or every type of music should. But it's certainly not a knock against it. In the same way
There's
that I wouldn't.
definitely a reason why a lot of people listen to EDM like when they work out.
Yeah, yeah, and it's not to say that that bad music is work music, or that good music is impossible to work to. This is just one of the styles that just really works with it that way, for sure. But I would definitely say that this isn't necessarily groundbreaking. I can consume it, but I don't know that I would say that it was like it was doing anything risky with its material. It just kind of like relied on a lot
Yeah,
of Korg stuff. It would take
yeah.
a single sound and then just like use that as the flavor for the sound, and it used a lot of children singing, which I just kind of got annoyed with.
That
I just didn't like it for whatever
didn't annoy
reason.
me, but I feel like overall, I would probably prefer like Nero or Zed over Porter Robinson, just because they have a little bit more of like a clearer direction in where they're going. This one, like kind of like what you're saying about the last album, the Nujabes album. This album to me kind of felt like it had like it has like a beginning and an end, but like in between it goes a lot of places, and I don't know that it necessarily like sometimes I'll be listening to one of the tracks. It just does something that makes me like kind of twist my head, like, where are we going?
Right.
I mean,
And
even
that's
the
something
track
that
that I
might be
like off
better
of
the
here,
second time around, though.
yeah, yeah, like even the track that I said I really enjoyed off of here, it did that for me. And sometimes that's good, like especially when I'm listening to EDM. Like I want to hear something hard, or I want to hear something a little crazy if we're going to like a drop or whatever.
Right.
But the drops here, like some of them were just like I don't know.
Well,
Um,
and that's why I said like it's almost like it took like an indie music ethic and
yeah.
put it into EDM, because it's not focused on the drop.
Hmm.
It's not focused on uh, the like necessarily like danceability. I mean, there are definite like breakdowns, where it could be like dance time,
Hmm.
but I felt like it was really more about song structure, about fun, about
Hmm.
painting a picture, rather than
Right.
just the kind of like raw materials of, all right, we're going to build, okay, it's time for a drop, now everyone
Uh,
dance. Like it kind of,
right. Right. Right.
to me, had an extra element there that I thought was nice,
Yeah. And
but
I
definitely
respect that.
sets it apart. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
bringing an entirely new possibility to the concept of EDM, because a lot of people see it as exactly what it's called, which is
Hmm.
electronic dance music. You're expecting
Right.
to dance to this stuff. You're expecting it to get you excited. But here's an
Hmm.
album that's not necessarily trying to do that. It's playing it a little bit safe. It's playing it a little bit quiet and a little bit more of a groove rather than a head bob. And
Right.
and that's a very interesting direction for you to take something like this. It's like trying to mash classical music into hard rock, which has happened before to varying
Right.
degrees of success. But
Right.
if you're taking this and expecting it to rock your world and make you get up and move all the time, to keep you awake while you're driving or
Yeah.
something like
It's
that,
not gonna
no,
do
it's
that
it's not going to
necessarily.
do that. But that's not bad. That's not what it's
Right.
trying to do.
Right.
Yeah, for sure. Well, excellent. Well, excellent. As anything else you want to say about this?
The only other thing that came to mind was it kind of also reminds. There's another artist called Cashmere Cat, and he's kind of more known for the tracks that he produces for like other artists, but on his own projects, he is very like he kind of has this glitchy kind of style, kind of like Porter Robinson, where like you'll be expecting a drop to happen, and then it's just super chill. It's like no, like there's the build up, and then there's no, you don't get a drop. You get like marimbas or something like that, So I do kind of like that, kind of like subverting it, almost kind of like a little anti EDM. So like I like that, but like it is an acquired taste. So
Yeah.
Sure.
yeah.
And something like, I mean, you had Josh just kind of mentioned briefly like the annoying kids singing, which I could see how that would be annoying. I think for
Sure, that's
me,
total personal preference. Totally.
no,
Yeah.
for sure, you don't have to apologize.
No,
but
I feel
but
like
I'm
I have
just
to.
I I think for me, like I've been focusing on like this album for me is like fun, joy, like excitement, and so like for me, it's almost like brings me back like to a childhood. Like it's very, I don't know. To me, even the fact that it reminds me of like video games and anime, like that's like my childhood. Like
Right.
those aren't really even things that I do anymore, but like they're things that give me good vibes. So like for me, even just like the kids singing or like, you know, kind of like childish elements of the music, it kind of all just like transports me to like a place of like not only like a fantasy world, but also like I'm a kid again in that fantasy world. So it's like a very specific feeling, but it's like a nice nostalgic kind of feeling, and that's like where this album brings me.
This
Well,
is
that's something.
Zach's inner child album.
That's something
Pretty
that happens a
much.
lot in
Fair.
music, though. I love, like, for instance, early. Oh man, I like out of all of the Jars of Clay albums that have been released throughout the years, I love If I Left the Zoo because it was the first one that I listened to, and I just listened to it yesterday or the day before, and I was just kind of like, this is '90s junk, kind of, but I
Yeah,
still
they
really
totally
liked
were.
it. Yeah, it was total '90s junk music, but I love it. I still love it because it has great lyrics, it's got great concepts and stuff, but I can see how like their production was just trash. Their decisions were exactly what everybody else was doing and it just wasn't good stuff, but I still loved it. And I think that's you should expect that of everybody to like music for stupid reasons. You know,
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
like we all have these pieces that we say are 10 out of 10, but you go to any review site and you'll see just these wild definitions of good music. Everybody has their own personal preferences, and to say that you can take this into an objective manner is just impossible. So anything that I said about it, it's just kind of like, we'll take it with a grain of salt because I didn't grow up the same way.
Sure. Yeah.
Right.
I mean,
For sure.
except for that, the music I like is all objectively good, 10 out of 10. So.
Of course. Of course,
Always.
even the children singing on this, definitely not creepy or anything like that.
All
All
right,
right.
Josh. What about yours?
Rome by Danger Mouse and Daniel Luppi or Loopy. I don't know. He's a weird guy, though. I've seen pictures of him, and he looks a little loopy.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was really bad. I'm sorry. Okay, I don't love this album, but I think this is one of those albums that's just absolutely talkable. It's such a huge conversation piece, due to how it was conceived, what they were doing with the album, why they put it together, who they chose, what sound they were trying to get out of all of it, and it's just interesting, just simply on that. So just to recap on what I'm talking about there, this was recorded in Rome on analog recording systems. So they were doing like reel to reel stuff, and they were cutting records, doing this. They weren't recording digitally at all, and they got old, like these guys that were in their 60s at this point. They used to do like soundtracks for old movies in the 50s and 60s and 70s that kind of had the same sound that Rome has throughout its play, of just like warm, sunny, slightly European. You get a lot of strings, all that kind of stuff. So that's what these guys were good at. So Danger Mouse and Daniel Luppi come in, and Daniel Luppi's done a lot of soundtrack work. So this is totally up his alley. And then you've got Danger Mouse, who kind of loves that classic sound but likes to make it muddy. And then so they're working with people who used to do this kind of thing all the time. So they got the professionals who are just they can just do this anytime that they want to, and then they bring in great voices that they really really respect with Jack White and Nora Jones. So the entire thing was just kind of a love letter to this old classic soundtrack style. And so ultimately whether you like it or not is entirely dependent on whether you like old movies, I guess, and old movie style. But if you don't, then it's going to be completely lost on you, but at least it's an interesting premise for an album. But I wouldn't necessarily say that its outcome was fantastic. It was just like, well, that was interesting, and I may never listen to it again, but I'm glad I did.
I really
No.
enjoyed this. I really enjoyed this a lot. It actually reminded me of like the dude who did those Clint Eastwood movies, Ennio Morricone. I think that's how you say his name.
Okay.
And I don't know if he's Italian too. But just kind of like that Western kind of, I don't even know. I'm trying to look this up now so I can know. Like the good, the bad, and the ugly. That's what I'm thinking about. The whole
Okay.
trilogy.
Spaghetti Western style.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. This really reminded me of that. It's again, when I told you, I kind of wish there was like some sort of visual component to this thing because it's really short. It's like maybe
Yeah, it's what 30 minutes long. I'm not even sure.
under a minute, or like a minute. So, yeah, but it was really good. Jack White and Nora Jones sounded great. It was just a good sounding piece of music, and I felt like I needed some sort of like visual reason for this to exist.
Yeah.
Like I enjoy it, but it would have been cool to see like some sort of like artistic expression.
I would have liked to have more pieces with a little bit of lyrics in it. I would have liked to have more Jack White, more Nora Jones. For the
Yeah.
most part, it kind of stays in this one theme of just like a few of the songs are even called "Theme of Rome," and and so like it definitely feels like a movie, which movies have themes that run throughout it, and you hear the same theme song going through it over and over. Same with TV shows. So. It works for a TV show because you need to be reminded of what you're watching from episode to episode. But
Yeah.
when you're talking about an album, you already know what you're listening to, so it gets a little tiring to hear things over and over again for sure.
Yeah.
So
I was actually looking up information about the album. Some of the songs have been used in, like Breaking Bad and like other movies. Um, so I find that interesting. You have this soundtrack.
so we're not the only ones that saw that connection,
Yeah.
basically.
Right? They're like, hey, I'm gonna put this in my movie or in my TV show.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't know. I heard Zach say no immediately for this one. What was that?
No, seriously, this album pissed me off.
It's a no from you. It's gonna be a no from you, Zach.
Yeah, I agree with Steven. I really thought it could have used a visual component. Like I really felt like it was such a strong concept that like at least it would have made sense to like make a movie with it. I like the concept. I like the idea that it was recorded in Rome on analog stuff. I understand why they chose Jack White in that sense because he's done a lot of work with analog recording. But like I just felt like I liked the music. The music was great. I don't know why they chose Jack White and Nora Jones, and I felt like it completely ruined everything.
Really?
And
Because of them?
yeah,
of their
because
vocals?
because the voices didn't do anything with that style of music for me.
Mm.
I don't know. It was just very grating. Like
Huh.
I'm listening to it. I'm getting like a really like chill vibe from these movie themes. Like it's really like nice music, and then you know Jack White starts singing, and I'm like, please no, why?
Okay, I
If
can
you didn't
totally
know
agree
it
with
was
you on
Jack
Jack.
White, would you feel the same way?
What's that?
If you didn't know it was Jack White, would you feel the same way?
I probably would. I probably would.
Yeah.
Although, I mean, it could be partially that that I just get a certain vibe from Jack White, um, and that vibe just doesn't match with that kind of music. So I mean, maybe your question has merit. It's just that
Mm.
I've listened to a lot of Jack White, and so I just know what kind of music he belongs in, and it's not
Mm.
this. But
Stay in
even
your
but even
place.
Stay
well,
in your lane.
but even Nora Jones, like
I'm not a Nora Jones fan.
yeah, I mean it was fine, but I felt like they could have chose musicians with like just a little bit more refined voices, a little bit
Mm.
lighter, a little bit more like goes along with this kind of music.
Mm.
To be fair, though, I think my favorite song on the album, and I wanted to like it, and I listened to it a few times through. Uh, One of my favorites was probably "Seasons Trees." I did end up enjoying that song, but really, like even after a few listens, I was just kind of like, can't get into it.
Right.
Yeah.
Overall, I kind of expected that of like the reactions. I expected it to be this like, yeah, cool concept, not a great album, because that's how I feel about it. But I have to vehemently disagree with you on Nora Jones. I think her voice was absolute gold for this. It's warm, it's dark, it's brooding, and it works perfectly with what Danger Mouse usually does. So
Yeah,
I thought that she brought just such an interesting dripping style to it that worked so well with it. Jack White, on the other hand, yeah, I can totally see it.
Yeah, I was
It was
surprised to hear
okay,
him on this. But I
but they
still think he
yeah,
did okay.
and they definitely when they were promoting this album, which I don't think they did much promoting, but when they were
Yeah,
talking
not
about
really.
it, they did some Q&As, and people asked them, why did you choose these two people? And they said, because these two people are fantastic, and we respected the ever living daylights out of them, and really, really wanted to work with them. Again, I think probably Zach is right that since Jack White has done a whole lot of analog recording, they probably brought him in to help them with that.
Right.
Um, but with Nora Jones, I think they just wanted her voice. I really think they did.
Yeah.
And
and
yeah.
I think that she probably wasn't the worst choice. Here's what it is: she should have been singing in Italian. It would have worked.
Ooh, that would have been cool.
It would have worked a little bit better, I think. But I don't know.
Hmm,
Maybe
interesting.
yeah, maybe it's just because I like Italian music and like old like scores and like so to me it kind of like Daniel Luppi, like it kind of felt like it was going in that kind of direction, like an old world kind of feel, and then it didn't go. Maybe I just had the wrong kind of expectations.
It could be. Well, like I said, it's definitely it's a cool concept, but in practice, a lot of cool concepts don't work very well. And just one of them to me. I think it worked okay, but it just
People probably liked it. I mean, that's just my opinion. Like you don't have to feel bad about suggesting it
Oh
because
no, I
it's
certainly don't. Yeah.
it definitely was. It was definitely one interesting to look into
Mhm.
because the concept is there. I mean, it's a very interesting concept.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I also found it interesting. I'm still looking up stuff about the album. The choir that was on The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly is actually the same choir that's on this.
Really?
So, yeah,
Okay. So
yeah,
yeah, that gives people or yeah, that'll give you a little bit more of a
yeah. It's
frame of
even another
reference.
connection. Like, I mean, I heard the connection anyway, but I didn't think it was the exact same
Right.
voices. So,
Right. Yeah. Well, that's interesting that across the board for this episode, we had 3 albums that were kind of soundtracky in nature.
Yeah.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, it just kind of happened. Isn't that weird?
Yeah, it kind of
Yeah.
happened in the next round too. That we have similar-ish.
That's true.
Suggestions.
Yeah, yeah. We're doing Sturgill Simpson, Punch Brothers, and shouting matches, and they're all very American and country. Yeah.
Like, so, white people, you will love this next episode. Your music right here.
Stay tuned, white people.
Yeah. Stay tuned. Yeah.